Calvary Cemetery in Chicopee, Massachusetts. This is an incredible concept that it's a diocesan cemetery. An old-time definition of diocesan cemetery is one made only because it's going to serve the whole Catholic Diocese of Western Massachusetts. And there's only two of them ever made in Western Massachusetts. Both of them are in Chicopee. The first one was in 1851, this Calvary Cemetery, and the second one in 1857 was now called the St. Patrick's Cemetery. Remember how big Western Massachusetts are, maybe 100 communities or more, and yet there's no other diocesan cemetery by the old definition where the Catholic cemetery starts their own and there's no Catholic church associated with it. Those cemeteries are in the hundreds. These diocesan cemetery, by old definition, only two, and Calvary's the first one. Now, it ended up not staying that way incredibly long. It started shifting definition to being used by the Holy Name Parish, and I'll go into that a little later. Behind us is the gates, way in the distance, but we're going to talk each of the quadrants at this main intersection, and in this quadrant right here, most of the modern burials are being put in, especially the family 2, 4, 8 plotters. They're in this section. There's some very old ones towards the front and more modern ones towards the back. There's only 2 churches that ever became associated with this. One was the Assumption Church, and that main priest that served the Assumption Church went by the name of Frederick Bonville. He's buried in the furthest section of this quadrant. So we're going to go around this little section, going off this side, and go back to this other quadrant right here, and we're actually going to come back to this in a few minutes. But in this quadrant, what you'll see if you walk around is in the furthest towards the east, you're going to see some very old burials, many without stones. And the further you go back in that far section, you have less of a stone around it. If you keep going back, you come to a section they changed into a place where cremation is, and then the baby section for non-baptized babies in the very back. As you come towards the front, more modern burials, and we're going to come back in a minute because there's a very important pastor buried right here. And then this section right here, sure, you have this quadrant, 2 main maintenance buildings, and you have a major single or double burial site. And in the middle, they're trying to keep it a circle as much as possible to make it look very pleasant. Okay, and then one more quadrant. In this quadrant over here, what do you see? You see towards the far western part, you see the very oldest burials of all, the burials that were at Potter's Field or Pupper's Grave, where the person could not afford to be buried by the family. They were put here. Now, diocesan cemetery meant that you probably were too poor to be buried. In fact, in 1849, cholera hit Holyoke, and 300 people died within a month of cholera, and they were buried here. Also, you would have burials from orphanages in Holyoke. You would have burials from old people's homes in Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee. You would have, you would have burials straight out of hospitals where no one claimed the babies or bodies put into here. Okay, in this section, the very front, they have a beautiful cross, and usually the cross in a cemetery is surrounded by the priest. In this case, Calvary, it's the first time I see them. They're surrounded by the nuns that serve the Holy Name School in Chicopee. So we're going to walk back to this place. Now, it says, Right Reverend John Conlin, 1866 to 1954, pastor of the Holy Name Church, 1905 to 1953, and ordained 1891. Conlin. Now, if you do the math, that's 48 years that he was the head pastor of the Holy Name Church. If you had come out to Chicopee you would have seen the first Catholic church ever in Western Massachusetts, called St. Matthew's. It was a parish, and then it became First St. Matthew's in 1840 with a wooden church. By 1857, it was replaced by a brick and mortar church, and it changed its name to Holy Name Church and Holy Name Pastor. But it's the same thing. This is the oldest church in Western Massachusetts. And the first few priests are not buried in the Western Massachusetts, they're buried in the East. But after that, the fourth and fifth pastor are buried right next to the church. And Father Conlin came in, and he's the sixth pastor, and he served for 48 years and really defined the whole church itself. Thank you for coming on this. This is just introduction. I help you go through the rest of the steps.